Yeah.
Anyway, no, her defense was totally lackluster. Starting from it wasn't so. There's two defense attorneys. There's Lunsford and this other fellow, John Hill. Um, the opening statements happened. This was Thursday of last week, and the defense's opening statement delivered by Hill was just insipid. He he didn't even. I mean, he didn't contest any of the facts. He said, "Oh, this is not a case about contesting the facts. This is just a case about um, I don't. Well, what is the case about if we're not contesting the facts? There were plenty of facts to contest, and we can go into that as we keep talking about it. But Hill did most of the interrogations or examinations, I guess, and cross examinations of witnesses, and on a lot of them, he started off by like apologizing to these people. He would say, "Oh, one of them, I forget which one I have in my notes, but he said, "Oh, I don't know the streets of Charlottesville nearly as well as you do, but blah blah blah." He was like, and his whole demeanor was weak. And so you knew you weren't going to get any strong cross examinations where you really put people on the spot and find, are you lying about this? What are you screwing up here? What did you do? And are you at fault? Like what you're saying right now, or what you're saying right now is at ends or at odds with your previous statements. So there was none of that. It was rather uninteresting. And Lunsford, for her part, her cross examination or her examination of Dwayne Dixon, the Antifa so-called professor, so-called expert in Asian studies or anthropology or whatever, they didn't ask him any of the critical questions that you would expect.
Oh, yeah. Well, from the start, the entire case was poisoned. The trial was never going to be fair. We had Donald Trump, yes, the president himself, went and basically convicted him from the bully pulpit. And then you had the entire corporate Jewish media convicting him 24/7 for a full year, more than a year, with one story every week almost about his guilt, frankly. You have the entire town. This is a college town. Charlottesville is an extremely, it's like an activist-oriented town. So they all wanted to lynch him. And the defense attorney, in all likelihood, wanted to see him convicted as well. Because obviously, Denise Lunsford, all ethical concerns aside in her career, again, she was dismissed from her duty as a prosecutor for ethical reasons. So all of that aside,
well, you already want to be suspicious of a defense attorney who's worked in the prosecutor's office in that district. Not a lawyer, but from talking to a lot of people who are knowledgeable about this stuff, that's just sort of a thing that you don't want, because if your defense attorney is hanging out with the prosecutor all the time, then there's a lot of social pressure to play by the rules, just go along, be nice, like be gentleman about it, and not really advocate for your client. And in the case of Fields, he's facing the rest of his life in prison, and I would think the stakes being that high that you would expect, even just as a common courtesy, that your attorney would take it seriously.
I think what's really troublesome here, I mean, your point about the prosecutor vis-a-vis defense is extremely poignant, because if you know anything, even the reverse, like whenever you get a public appointed attorney, you're likely getting a careerist who's just grinding through this job in hopes of getting some kind of position in the system. So if they do anything to shake things up, they're not going to really go that far for their client. And I can't even imagine the millions of conflicts of interest that come from the reverse of former prosecutor being appointed as your lawyer. Now, Mike Enoch is going to come on. He's more knowledgeable about this, but I heard that Fields originally had an appointed attorney that was actually pro-statute. He wanted to keep the Robert E. Lee statutes. And the courts actually ruled that was the conflict of interest. So Denise Lunsford ran as a Democrat for her position as a prosecutor, obviously has a very strong political beliefs. and yet she wasn't seen as a conflict of interest. So overall, what was the climate in there? What was there a lot of? Did you see anyone pressuring any witnesses or intimidating?
Not really. No, the climate was it was a show trial. The climate was just very. It was laid back. The prosecution witnesses, at least 3 of them, testified for 10 minutes on end about their injuries, which doesn't seem relevant to his guilt or innocence. And then a lot of them also, the prosecution main attorney, Nina Antony, started off her opening statement with Heather Heyer was a positive adjective, who would never hurt anyone else. It was absurd.
Mm-hmm. I think that the show trial comparison is very very good, because I mean, what did you think of the judge? Judge Moore allowed a private text message featuring a picture of Adolf Hitler as a sort of I mean, what is that other than
Moore? I mean,
ideology?
Moore, there's plenty of stuff we can say about Moore. I mean, he was the guy who saw the trials of the first 4 of the guys who were involved in the DeAndre Harris affair at the East Market Street garage. And of the 3 so far tried, all of them have been convicted. He's not allowed any of these trials to be conducted out of Charlottesville. I'm not actually, Mike might know better, but I don't think everybody who's been charged with some criminal offense related to Seville 2 has been tried by Moore. So actually the real clincher on him is during this case, he actually commented when the jury was out of the room that he couldn't see any other reason that Fields would have rammed into the crowd other than to murder him.
What was the context of him saying that? Why was he saying that at all? Was that because I heard that, I read that, but I didn't. Were you there when he said that?
No, I wasn't there when he said that. I was out. Right. It was yeah.
Right. Yeah, I don't know about every trial, but I know like this guy's obviously in the tank. Like he's not letting these things escape Charlottesville, and he's overseeing them in such a way as to guarantee a conviction. One thing I was saying is that one thing that you'll notice is that the defense actually did object to certain pieces of evidence brought by the prosecution, like these memes and pictures and such. So you wonder if the defense attempted to bring forth evidence that could have been exculpatory, and the prosecution objected to that on whatever frivolous grounds, and the judge just agreed. So in other words, through his he had an opinion already formed about the case. He has a political bias, and then through his role in the judge, he can work with the prosecutor to shape the evidence that they're allowing forward into the trial, which essentially create a narrative for the jury. And the defense can't really do anything about it unless they have a will to fight, in which case they can call attention to it. But in this case, I don't think Denise Lunsford like deliberately threw anything. She just didn't try very hard. Someone that was trying hard could have gotten an acquittal or a reduced charge, and really fought hard, and really pushed this, and also made this a bigger thing in the media. Made a media show of it, done press conferences, said my client is innocent, this is a setup, things like that, which she didn't do any of that. She kept everything quiet. She kept feeling nobody could talk to him. Some people have said, why didn't the alt-right fund a lawyer for him? Well, we wanted to do that. We couldn't get in touch with him. She wouldn't let anybody talk to him.
There's 2 problems with funding a lawyer for him. 1, she wouldn't allow Fields to talk to anyone. And 2,
there was no one that would take it.
Lawyers in Charlottesville that are licensed to practice there, that are competent, other than that Civil War LARPer, that are actually willing to represent these.
Yeah, there's no Virginia criminal lawyers that would take this case.
That alone should be grounds for moving the case out of that fucking district.
Yes. I mean, if he doesn't want her as an attorney, and he can't find another one, then he should have it be moved out of it. out of there.
I was also telling Greg, Mike, about Denise Lunsford. She was actually caught in a scandal a few years ago.
Yes, she was having affairs and shit like that.
No,
Yeah,
not just that. She actually.
Whoa! Can we go back into that too, Striker?
Yeah. Well, she colluded with a judge to essentially frame a man, do exactly what you're worried about, Mike, which is hiding potentially exculpatory evidence. Now, the victim of this was actually a Jew, Wiener. And
yes, I remember this. Yes, yeah.
So Wiener, of course, has the money to buy his freedom in the system. So he actually went and he appealed and he sued and he won. But it was shown that the judge and Lunsford worked together behind the scenes, her in her capacity as a prosecutor, to hide evidence that would show him as an innocent man. And for political or ideological reasons, because he was being accused by a woman of rape, he was being basically railroaded.
Yeah. So I think it would be interesting I don't know how available this would be, to look into any kind of internal wrangling they did over what kind of evidence is allowed, because there's certain things that we all knew that were really important. And for example, the tweets by Taylor Lorenz and that woman not being called at all as a witness. She was a witness to the whole thing. She saw it happen. And she tweeted things that were very exculpatory to Fields, and neither of those tweets were presented, nor was she ever called as a witness. So why wasn't she called as a witness? The Dwayne Dixon thing was sort of like, it felt like she put him up there and gave him the chance to contradict his videos and then let it go. Now, I think he probably was lying in his videos, but there's a lot of other interesting things that could have been asked, as Greg was pointing out on Twitter the other day. So, it seems like she was sounding like, oh, so you were bullshitting about like that waving the gun at Fields or whatever. He probably did wave a gun at whatever other muscle car he saw or whatever, but they were also blocking traffic. So when they were talking
and the other key question too is, not only were they blocking traffic, but did they move any of the barriers that said, the roadblocks?
I would be 100% certain that they did, because
there was supposed to be a roadblock that prevented anybody from going south on 4th Street to the south of Market Street. Yeah. So there was, according to the police's plan. So at some point it was moved. Now, why didn't what's-her-face Shiflett, the school resource cop who was carrying a pistol and got scared and was called off her post, why didn't she testify that it was there when she left? Or why didn't she stay at her post, really, is the real question. And if she was scared, why was she scared?
She was scared because the crowd wasn't a joyful, jubilant, celebratory group. She was scared because they were violent and they were attacking cars, and she couldn't stop it. And there was no right-wingers there. There was none of us there. No one from this side of the protest was present. They tried to see, when she said that, they tried to change it, so they were like, oh, there was UTR people that were in the vicinity, and there was this. There wasn't. Video evidence of the whole thing.
Here's what they did. They conflated UTR with the Pennsylvania Lightfoot LARP militia. And when those people were getting chased out of town by the commies, like, okay, yeah, that sucks, fair enough. And like, to give them their due, they also, probably, were somewhat useful. But like, they kept acting like those people were us. So, oh, these armed rightists. Oh, there was armed rightists in an altercation nearby. And we heard about them at Friendship Court, that there were these armed rightists. All of them are referring to this militia group, acting like that was us.
Yeah.
Yeah,
that's another thing. They all said, we heard that people needed help. And what that means is they heard there was people they could go and beat up.
Yeah. So another thing that I found interesting is that the man who's filmed attacking the car in the video, who the fuck is this guy? Why was he called to the witness stand? Why weren't any of the figures around the car photographed approaching the car casually as it's driving supposedly into the crowd? None of them were subpoenaed or brought in as witnesses. Those people needed to be cross-examined.
And they had 30 people, because they brought in every person that was hurt in the accident. They brought in every person that was hurt in the accident that was in that crowd of people. At least one of them knew somebody, or knew somebody that knew somebody that knew one of those people. It could have been found who those people were. We had a straight up face shot picture of that guy that attacked the back of the car. He could have been found. He could have been subpoenaed. He could have been questioned. What the fuck were you doing?
Did you hit the car or not? Right.
Well, we know he hit the car. It's there,
Course,
and I'm
right.
wondering if the jury even saw pictures of him hitting the car. Is there any evidence that they did? Do we know that they did? Because it's hard for a lot of times when people are in the stands in court, they don't see the pictures and the videos and stuff that the jury's seeing. It's all pointed at them, and the crowd doesn't see it.
That's exactly what was going on. Yeah, I mean, I've been in courtrooms where you do see the evidence that's being presented, but that was not the case here. You couldn't see what they were saying.
It was all secret. This is so secretive what they were doing. They kept this jury. I mean, obviously, a jury has to be sequestered, but they kept them totally in the dark. I mean, they literally. I honestly believe that the judge and the prosecutor and possibly Denise Lunsford worked together to frame and shape the evidence such that the trial looked good enough to be a real trial. Like a few things were presented here or there, and then just but so much was left out. And so it's just a difficult thing. And there's, everyone felt really powerless. People tried to do stuff, but what could we really do when we couldn't talk to the guy and there was no other lawyer that would take his case? I mean, what can we do in that circumstance? I really don't know.
What was the nature of the evidence you saw, Greg?
What do you mean? What evidence from the prosecutor?
What did they show? Like, what was the?
Well, okay. Well, I'll tell you what they didn't show. They didn't show the VSP police helicopter footage that was taken overhead of the entire incident. Now, that would give you a really good idea of it's one thing when you're told that he's traveling 28 miles an hour, he slows to 17, then he speeds up to 23, like whatever. But it's another thing to actually see it. That video is not public. The other video that's not public is the Red Pump restaurant security camera footage that was shown to the audience or to the jury, but not to anybody else.
Mm-hmm.
And those are probably the two key pieces of evidence. And also, I wonder on both of those pieces of evidence, is there a picture of the intersection of Market Street and 4th Street where you see a barricade, either on 4th Street or a barricade where it's supposed to be, or moved over to block eastbound traffic on Market?
What was the reaction of the jury when it came out that Fields had put his home address in his GPS shortly before the car accident? I mean, how could you possibly convict someone of premeditated murder when you do that?
I wasn't in the room for that witness. You're talking about Depew, who was the forensic research guy. I didn't see that. I mean, I saw their reaction on other stuff, and it varied from just shock, or sometimes they're covering their mouths. Sometimes they, wide-eyed. Other times bored.
Would you say that the jury looked kind of leftist or kind of like Antifa types?
They looked leftist. I wouldn't say leftist so much as shit libby. There was
same thing. I mean, well, it's. I mean, if not, I don't think they would let. I heard that there was one juror with colored hair. Is that true? That's surprising because that seems like straight up Antifa.
No. Unless somebody colored their hair blonde or something. No, nobody had like blue hair.
I heard there was like someone with like rainbow hair, and I was like, why would they ever allow someone like that on? That's an obvious hard leftist or Antifa type J leftist.
In cases like this, liberal and leftists are kind of
it's the same thing. They're the same thing. Look, Antifa are just liberal.
You have liberals that are lifelong opponents of the death penalty for child rapist murderers.
Yes, that will want to hang this guy. Yeah, I've seen it all over Twitter.
In this case, you see it all over Twitter that they're celebrating a young man in his 20s basically being put in the electric chair for his ideology. So they're not against the death penalty. They're just
the same people that have sympathy for blacks that shoot like 4 people in a gang-related killing and say it's not his fault, like want to hang this guy. It's disgusting.
What do you think? What do you think of the overall behavior of Judge Richard Moore, Greg?
I mean, he's the master of the circus. As I was just saying earlier, he's clearly biased. He looks a lot like Mitch McConnell.
Ha!
I think that kind of gives you an idea. Yeah.
Physiognomy. Yeah. I mean, I personally think that it's I really don't know. Like, how are we able to call attention to this if at this point people haven't spoken out? Like, how are we supposed to get people's eyeballs on Charlottesville and say, listen, there is something very rotten about the judicial system here. It's not working as it's supposed to work. It's very politicized, and this judge won't allow anyone to try their case outside of Charlottesville. Like, what kind of what do you think the next step would be from after seeing this trial in action?
One thing is what the leftists do, which is at any given point, there were 20 to 50 of them in the courtroom. So I think it's difficult, or it's clear that they do that because they know that it's going to have some effect on the jury's sympathies, especially if you've got a couple of people crying every now and then when grotesque evidence or images of grotesque things are played for the jury, and you've got a couple of people like whimpering in the audience. It has an emotional effect, and the prosecutor's entire case was built on emotion. I mean, just smart, given that 9 of the 16 jurors were women. I'm not sure how many of the final 12 ended up being women.
Yeah, the pack the court tactic that leftists use is very powerful because, one, it allows them to physically intimidate the jury and even the witnesses. I mean, there's 1 or 2 witnesses in supportive fields that were doxxed right after they went on the stand. They were doxxed by Antifa journalists and activists, and that was probably partially, at least, through information gathered by people in the audience and people in the media. So,
yeah,
the packing the court definitely works, but over there, obviously, they had home field advantage. Now, what do you think the sentencing is going to look like? I'm not sure. I don't think they gave him a sentence yet. But what do you think that's going to look like?
So we just found out that he got convicted of first-degree murder and everything else. Yesterday I left Charlottesville because I honestly figured that the jury deliberation would take longer than a day. I thought they were going to at least spend. I mean, there's so much information to process and so many charges to analyze. I mean, you'd think it would at least take 2 or 3 days, but they came up with they convicted him of everything today. I would have thought they would have not found him guilty of first-degree murder, and that they would have found him guilty of second or manslaughter, because you can if someone's charged with first, you can the jury is allowed to reduce it or find you guilty of those other 2 charges because they're implied in the first-degree murder charge. But they found him guilty of all of them, so it really was a total kangaroo court, and they felt no compulsion to to defer to reason. So
yeah, I mean, think of it this way: it really is impossible to get an unprejudiced jury after the president of the United States, Donald Trump, goes out there and says he's guilty, that he's a murderer. They need to lock him up and throw away the key.
He said throw away the key, really?
Yeah. Yeah, that was the president of the United States.
What an asshole!
I'm probably not gonna vote for him in 2020.
I don't see any reason to support this fucking guy.
It's over for Trump.
It's over. You can't do shit, and it's done. And it's just the whole meme is dead.
Yeah,
it's just a sick joke at this point.
Yeah, because that's one of his constituents. That's probably one of his voters. And
I'm sure he voted for him, and he went out and he marched for him. Effectively, Charlottesville was a march for Donald Trump. I don't give a shit what people like. I mean, the left is right here. This was a march of Trump supporters. I mean, but Trump won't support his own people. He won't support the Proud Boys, which doesn't have the same optics as Charlottesville. They go out and they wear MAGA hats. This is part of their thing. He wouldn't help them either. He won't help anybody. And then he wants to say go and fight Antifa. No, Trump. No one's fighting anybody for you.
Go and fight. Go and fight Antifa, and then when they set you up in a kangaroo court, I'll
tell them to lock you up and throw away the key. Get the fuck out of here.
I mean,
I still think he's just like he's just stupid. Like he's
I
just,
don't think-
and everybody's
I think
laughing
that-
at him, dude. Everybody's laughing at this. The liberals, they're laughing. They're batting him around like a pinata, and they're laughing. And
Well,
it's
he's doing
total
the,
ineptitude.
the prison reform thing and the thing liberals are doing in response. They're not saying, "Wow, good job, President Trump. You're doing prison reform. You're letting my dangerous blacks out." No, what they're saying instead is laughing at him, saying, "Oh, of course you support prison reform because Mueller is on your tail." So that's
They know that he's basically being intimidated and supporting this shit.
Yeah. So
it's absurd.
So when it comes to the Fields trial, I mean, did it have the feel of a show trial, Greg? I know you've been abroad to other countries. Did it have like a third world show trial?
I haven't been dragged before a judge in Russia or anything, but yeah, it definitely felt like a show trial. I mean, the defense wasn't trying. The prosecution was bringing the most outrageous claims. Their witnesses were saying, just going off on tangents, and the defense never said objection, relevance. When you do that, psychologically, animalistically, you're telling the jury, yeah, we're in a position of weakness. Yeah, we think we're wrong, or we don't even believe in our own cause. Like, just walk over us.
I honestly think that for people that are still on trial in Charlottesville, if they can't get a decent lawyer, their best bet is probably to represent themselves.
Well, I mean, I would go easy with that. A criminal trial is very different than in a civil trial, and the thing is what people don't know about, and maybe if somebody studied for a long time and actually understood Virginia criminal procedure, the Virginia criminal law, criminal procedure, and appellate procedure. This is all very, very complicated stuff. What I would tell them to do is make really, really harsh demands of your lawyer. Don't just go along with them. If you get a lawyer, you're going to need them to help you navigate the system, generally speaking, because a lot of people don't understand how this works. It's very complicated. So you need but demand that they defend you and complain against them if they don't.
The problem is that with publicly appointed lawyers, your demands will fall on deaf ears. And if you have a situation like Fields is in, where your lawyer is potentially plotting and conspiring against you to get you convicted, putting you on a tee.
Well, I wouldn't. I mean, that's another. I think that we have to be. I think that's a claim. I wouldn't go so far as to say that she like sat down with the prosecution.
No, I'm not saying.
I think she just knew what she needed to do, which was like, what's like the sort of bare minimum I can do to make it look like I really tried here. And again, it's possible that she tried harder than we think she did, but the judge was not allowing certain pieces of evidence and certain arguments to be made, because the judges can do that. Because they have to basically, before they go to the trial, each side knows what everything about what the other person is going to do, and it's all been approved, and the judge has seen everything, and they all know what each other's evidence, all of it's going to be.
Yeah.
So it's entirely possible that they were that's why I do think Denise Lunsford did a bad job, but to say that she definitely conspired, although she did conspire one time before, so she clearly has not necessarily an ethical person.
It's not beyond her. Yeah.
But we don't have evidence of that, so I don't want to go making wild claims that we don't have evidence. We know she did a bad job. We know a lot of evidence that was out there and that was even given to her that she didn't present. So the question would be why? Because she didn't want to, or because the judge prevented her? We also know the judge is totally. I would put more blame here on the judge, because he has a certain ethical and moral responsibility here, and legal responsibility. He doesn't care. He wants to use his position of power to enact He wants to get a political result.
Yeah, I mean, the point of a show trial isn't the conviction. Yeah. It's to show me and you and everyone listening that if you practice your right to free speech and assembly in public, the state-backed communist and anarchist death squads target you, the entire political and legal system will convict you on your political ideology alone.
Yes. And the fact that memes were used as evidence that he convicted on ideology. Hey, look, I know there's a lot of people out there that are they don't want to get too close to this. They're a little, and I understand that. I'm not condemning them, but I just want to let everyone know, if you don't want to get too close, it's like for example, a lot of alt-right people didn't want to touch this, and Ann Coulter, to her credit, did, and Ann Coulter didn't suffer. Her fan base didn't get mad at her. She didn't lose fans. She probably gained some fans by writing about this. Other pundits could have said stuff about this. Alt-right figures that definitely knew about this didn't say anything because they want to distance themselves for optics or whatever else. But the thing is, for all those people, those guys like sharing edgy memes too, right? Like the alt-right likes edgy memes as well. They like Pepe and Keck and all this stuff, right? That stuff is considered like white supremacist propaganda by these people. And if you ever get in a car accident or you get in a fight or you get in some kind of altercation, if you got Pepe's on your phone, the same thing's going to happen to you because of this precedent. So everyone has to speak up on this because convicting someone based on memes affects everybody.
Yeah, they convicted him essentially on 2 memes. The one with the car 3 months before, and one with Hitler in it that he sent his mother in a text message. So where is the proof that he actually plotted an attack on an unannounced?
2 memes is literally not proof of a premeditated attack. And then, of course, they did this whole thing. Oh, well, premeditation can be only for 1 second. Well, if premeditation is only for 1 second, then what the fuck is a non-premeditated crime? Because having it flash in your mind for 1 second, that's like the crime of passion, right? That's at least not first degree. So if premeditated, it's like I'm not. This isn't even really. I mean, this is just a ridiculous thing about Virginia law because apparently this is in Virginia law. But it's like that's an absurd. That's like an absurd precedent. You only need to be premeditated for like 1 second, and then it's murder 1.
Well, then from what I've seen, Fields, now correct me if I'm wrong, Greg, Fields got 6 life sentences, can potentially get
he hasn't been sentenced yet.
Right, but he can potentially get 6 life sentences plus 70 years. Now, just as a comparison, there was recently a transvestite that killed its parents. A
transsexual, not a transvestite. Transvestite is just someone that cross dresses. Sorry. Sorry, I'm trying to use correct language use, right?
Okay. Well, whatever. Some fucking disgusting freak.
Yeah. Literally a tranny. A tranny that was transitioning.
Killed its parents, both of its parents, because they wouldn't buy him gender transition drugs, and he got 40 years. Fields is now getting 6 life sentences potentially
for a car accident.
70. Yeah.
Yeah. So this like.
Yeah, and the Hitler thing kills me too because I mean, if you sent me his message with a picture of Hitler, and his message was they're the ones who should be afraid or something to that effect, and you sent me that message with a picture of Hitler, I would be like, oh, well, right, because they've done something wrong and they're going to be punished. Whereas if you sent me that same message with a picture of Roosevelt, I would be like, oh shit, somebody's getting Dresden.
Yeah.
Right? And so, like Moore spent a solid, I think it was about 20 minutes a couple days ago at the first, before the jury even came in. He spent a good 20 minutes mansplaining to the court why he was going to allow this evidence. And it was all based on, attaching a Hitler meme to your text message suggests a different thing than if you attached a picture of Mother Teresa or Martin Luther King or Gandhi.
Oh my God.
She said this in court?
Yeah, he did. Moore said it in court. Yeah.
The judge said it, not the fucking
What a fucking dude, what a piece of shit.
Yeah.
The judge said that.
Like if you
first of all, Gandhi created one of the worst civil wars in the 20th century.
Yeah, bro.
No, like these
people don't know that. I know.
They're tearing down Gandhi statues in South Africa because he didn't consider blacks human.
Yeah, I know. He also slept with little girls and all kinds of shit. Whatever. He's typical.
We'll go fire. The same one, right?
He wasn't well liked. I mean, he created like the India-Pakistan War is like one of the worst civil wars in history. So many people died. But,
So if you send a girl a Gandhi picture with a text of "See you next week," does that mean that you're gonna underage rape her?
Yeah, or how about Martin Luther King, who sparked countless riots across the South?
Yeah,
if you were to send that
rioting.
Like, hey, they're the ones that have to be afraid. What do you get? The Birmingham riots, right?
Yeah.
So
he was like legal, almost establishing legal precedent for what does Hitler mean absolutely.
Yes.
Yeah.
That's a crazy thing because Hitler, like the thing is, if it's all about the state of mind, what Hitler doesn't mean that to me. Hitler's like my buddy. He's like a teddy bear.
Uncle A, yeah.
Yeah, I see him like a comfy uncle figure, not like some mass murdering maniac.
When I think of Hitler, I think of him like feeding the does and
Yes, I think of him like in a forest with like animals surrounding him and small children. Like, yeah.
I mean that is very disturbing, actually. That this is the new precedent they're setting there. What other kinds of politicization, like what other political moments were there, spearheaded by the judge and perhaps the prosecutors, in your opinion, Greg?
I mean, that those that we've already mentioned have kind of been the main ones. I mean, him talking about Hitler versus these, leftist saint figures, and then him talking about that he couldn't see any other reason other than murder that Fields would be forced to drive into a bunch of people. Just totally tipping his hand.
I mean, if I was a defense in that case, what I would do is, okay, I'd accept that precedent that the judge is setting, but then I'd subpoena Heather Heyer's cell phone, and if she's sharing pictures of Marx or Trotsky or something like that, use that as establish that as proof that she's a dangerous person, and it's a self-defense case. I mean, there are so many ways you can kind of press the prosecution, which from what you tell me seems super ham-fisted. I mean, when I was reading the real-time updates on NBC 29, I was just reading that and just saying, if they're able to convict him based on this nonsense, then the decision was made before the trial even started.
Yeah, I mean, I think many people have said more, edgier things or sent pictures that are weirder. I mean, imagine you get into some self-defense situation. Somebody breaks in your house and you shoot them. I mean, does that mean they can go through your phone and then find, he shared a picture of, like, I don't know, somebody getting shot in the Russian Civil War. Therefore, he premeditated killing this guy who broke into his house. Like, it's obscene.
Yeah. So did Fields speak at all during?
No. As per the Fifth Amendment, you have a right to not incriminate yourself. So he didn't testify.
It's very rare that a criminal defendant testifies. Yeah. Almost never happens.
Did he seem shaken up during the trial?
He seemed like passed out, like he was not all there. Just kind of like he walked in, kind of stared straight ahead. He looks like a shell of a human, like the way you would look after, like, some, I don't know, the way George Bush looked after he got out of office and he realized that, he was responsible for all the shit that happened under his rule.
Yeah. I mean, one thing I know about Fields is that he's getting attacked like crazy in the prison, and some vicious black actually beat him pretty seriously, and then got out of jail, and they did like a GoFundMe for him.
No. That black didn't get out of jail. He was in jail, and somebody set up a GoFundMe for his legal defense because he's being charged for that.
Oh, okay.
And of course, he's allowed to. He's allowed to.
Oh yeah.
He's allowed to crowdfund on GoFundMe. Here's a black felon who probably committed some horrible crime to be in there. Once again shows that he has no problem being violent, beats the crap out of this young man who's like not getting protected adequately by the prison authorities, and then he raised like $100,000 on GoFundMe, and it was set. I don't know exactly how it was set up, but this did happen, and it was supposedly for his legal defense. And of course, I can only imagine the kind of disgusting white liberals that were contributing to that, the kind of just like vile slugs of human beings that were doing that kind of thing. It's really vile. And seeing these people that, like, the thing that sickens me so much about this system is the pretense, this saccharine, preening, moral bullshit that it survives on, that the people that believe in it, they become these disgusting slugs of human beings. They become these worms, these spineless little creatures. The kind of people that wear an "I'm sorry for slavery" shirt, just like,
or a safety pin.
yeah, it's just like really just like nothing, like just like moral nothings. People with no character, with no they're just
yeah,
they're not just NPCs, they're like worse than NPCs. They're like actually like foul creatures.
Well, there was a very go ahead.
I think the big sort of the overall problem is there's a people don't understand. People don't have a sense of limits anymore. So, for instance, when evidence is presented, people don't have any sense of balance or justice or what is too much information. I mean, because with any given person, you could present infinity information about them, and the prosecution definitely presented tons of information about Fields and about all of the people who were hit by the car, but they were selective in doing so, and the information they presented was irrelevant. I mean, one of the worst examples of this was that they allowed 2 clips of phone calls that Fields had while in prison with his mother in December and I think December of 17 and March of 18. And in both of these phone calls, or in the first phone call, Fields says something about Susan Bro, that is Heather Heyer's mother, is a fat communist.
Right.
He gets angry, and his mother kind of says something, and I get angry with my mother all the time. Probably most of my phone calls end with me yelling for 20 minutes.
I don't think he was angry at his mother. He was venting.
Right, he was venting, and then they present this, and it's like, reminder, he's been talking to her all the time for over a year on prison phone calls. And these are the only 2 instances they could find. And then they could say, oh, look, see, he's unhinged. He's just crazy. My God. I mean, and also he premeditated it because he hated Heather Heyer's mother, who he didn't even know.
And who he'd probably at that point seen on TV. Like, I mean, he said she's slandering him. Basically, He said that she's an anti-white communist and she's slandering him.
Mm-hmm.
Like, what? Where's the lie, first of all? But then, like, you know, then like if him saying that means he's not like sorry for the thing, and also a lot of leftists kind of gave an insight into their personality, their moral compasses, and the way that they operate. When they said like, oh well, he's only crying because he got when he found out that he killed someone inadvertently, he's only crying because he got in trouble. Like,
yeah, that's how they would feel.
That's how you think. That's how you think about it.
Yeah. Oh no, they see this. I think everyone from the judge to the prosecution to the defense, they all see this as a kind of "where were you when the Nazis were rising" type of moment. That's my theory on this. I don't know that for sure, but that's the climate in America right now. It's very hard to get a fair trial or a fair hearing because we have all these elites that are feeling like they're in 1930 and, you know, they're seeing brown shirts marching down the street.
No, it's yellow vests this day and age.
Yellow vests.
The yellow vests are marching.
Oh,
I've got mine on.
Yeah. Well, they better watch out because these kinds of abuses lead to yellow vests, as we see in France. You know, I was reading a study today.
You can't really see it on the because I'm so closed up on the video. But here we go. There it is.
I was reading a study today that France and Germany actually censor people more than Hungary, Poland, and Russia.
Of course,
there's more speech censorship in these countries, according to a study done by a think tank called Libertex.
Fuck studies. You don't need studies to know that. You should know it a priori. A democracy is going to have more suppression of free speech and free expression than a dictatorship is, because only in a democracy does the opinion of the mob matter.
Yeah, but I also think it's because the Constitution and the pole upon which a Macron or a Merkel stand on is far more shoddy. They don't have an actual a popular system, because as we were talking with Mike the other day, liberal democracy only allows you a very finite menu of choices as to what you can do. So it's very hard to adapt to the people what the populace wants when you're in that situation. Because if you're Macron, you want to spend more on infrastructure or create more jobs through expanding the money supply. You can't do that because you're in the European Union and you depend on a bank in Brussels to give you permission to do that. So they simply are unable to represent the people, which is why they're requiring more and more censorship as time goes on. And I think we're seeing some of this happening in America right now, where they're simply unable to grant us a fair day in court, because if they do, then that just strengthens the dissidents and essentially brings the end of liberalism. I mean, they're not wrong about that, when they do that.
No, I mean, they're doing what they need, what they feel they need to do, and probably what they do need to do in order to preserve this system. But I mean, I think that this, and the question is, how many other people can we get to see it like us, or are seeing it like us? And we had a guy that called into our call-in show last night who was saying that it was very easy for him to convince his kind of like normie tier conservative family of the innocence of Fields. He just had to show them a few facts that they weren't going to be getting from just the mainstream media. So if there's someone who's not interested in it because of, they have other things to do in their life or whatever, they're just going to be getting this one filtered view. And because we're really interested in it, we're all over it. We know everything. So we assume that everybody does, but they don't know shit. So all he had to do was explain a few things to his sort of normie Christian conservative family. And they were like, oh, well, that makes sense. And they're like, oh, but they're never going to let him off. And so then they immediately get that, like, one, that he's innocent. And then, oh, yeah, forget about it. This system is going to hang this guy. And so the question is, how many people can live with that? How many people can live with the complete incapability of the system to deliver justice?
I think the government is kind of reacting to that. I saw that the FBI took the Proud Boys off of their extremist list, which is interesting.
They claimed that they never put them on, and it was all a big misunderstanding. But that's probably bullshit.
And I think that's just a temporary walk back, because they understand that very point you're making, that how many people, because these kinds of injustices like you see with Fields, it's not really possible to do this, because once you impact enough lives and enough people, then you have you hit a threshold, and those people come and overthrow your government. So they're kind of going to be careful in how they expand this suspension of civil liberties, depending on your ideology. And I think that, it's going to be maybe another year or two before you start seeing alt-right people being put up.
Well, I think also they're going to be, in the short term, they're going to be successful in forcing people off the streets. I mean, they've been successful, and this is going to intimidate a lot of people. I mean, I think that on some level, this is going to achieve its goal, at least in the short term, of no one's going to want to go out. And this is the reason why, Donald Trump in his impotent rage tweeted that out about Antifa, but no one's going to follow that lead because everybody knows what's going to happen. And obviously he's either he seems to be somehow totally impotent here, so he can't help anybody, assuming he wants to. So it's going to be, but again, at some point, the alternative isn't going to be worth it anymore. The alternative of not doing something, it's going to be like, well, and that's coming fast, because look, people were promised things. And they wanted those things, because they expected that those things were going to make their lives better. They wanted the wall. They wanted the end to immigration. They wanted, manufacturing and things like that to come back. They wanted improved wages and jobs. They wanted all that stuff, and they're not getting it. And so the fact that they're not getting it is ultimately going to really start impacting people's lives. And then it's going to be like, well, okay, I mean, basically, you're not going to have anything really happen until it's sort of like the idea of jail doesn't seem actually all that bad. I mean, I hate to bring out a black pill or sound apocalyptic or grandiose or something like that, but this is just how it's been historically.